you compromise yourselves in joining me on a whole trip beyond the galaxies to the unknown? This is a little safety warning because our trip is going to be very bumpy. Feminism is about questioning. And I'm sure that if I was to ask you, you would say that we have questioned enough thus far. Look at where we are. Well, no, I disagree. I strongly disagree with you. This is just a fake facade of equality that is keeping us tamed down and content with how much we have achieved already. Feminism is about questioning. Right, so we're ready for the journey now. Please remain seated, fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the ride. We will make 4 stops. First stop, questioning traditions and reaching for the stars. I belong to a saga of fearless, strong and faceless women. In 1939, after Spain had gone through a horrible civil war that had left the country teared apart in pieces, my great-grandmother widowed at the same time that Spain became a dictatorship and everybody was dying of famine. And this was a time in which women were made to believe that they could only do 3 things. 1, love God. 2, love the fatherland, the fantastic dictatorship. And 3, care for their family that they had to build and maintain. In 1939, my great-grandmother, Ana Maria, widowed with 5 kids. But this didn't stop her. She was a woman in a man's world, all of a sudden starting to do all these tasks that she had always been barred from doing because she was only a mother that belonged in the household. And she was doing them together with her 5 kids, 4 of them being girls, women, young girls. They would all go to the fields every week and work their hard as they could. And you know what? They survived in times of absolutely awful famine in Spain. Now we move on to 1969. This is my beautiful grandmother, Rosa. In 1969, when my mother was only 10 years old, my great-grandmother, Rosa, widowed as well. Sorry for the pattern that is there in the family. But you know, it didn't stop my great-nanny. It didn't stop my nanny at all. She was one of the first women that obtained a driving permit back then in the 60s in my town. And together with her 2 single sisters, Amparo and Matilde, and together with my mother, they fought. This time, not only to survive the famine. No. This time, they were fighting to thrive. And the goal was clear. They wanted to get my mum to go to university. And nobody, a man, a woman, nobody could stand between them and that goal. And I'll tell you what, my mother made it. She did go to university thanks to this amazing woman. Of course, it was a lot easier for me. I was born 21 years ago in 1993, so that's about 20 years after the democracy was reinstalled in Spain. I was born in the same little village, Guardapoblet, as most of my ancestors were born in. And I also had the privilege of being brought up by these amazing women, well, at least those that remained from this saga that I was speaking about. My grandmother was still alive, Rosa, and her 2 sisters, Amparo and Matilde. And my mother, my beautiful mother, raised me with the same values that she was raised up. There were many of them, but the most important ones I'd kept with me: gender equality, hard work, but peace and freedom. We were a dream team, you wouldn't believe. We would drive every single weekend in this little car, in my nana's little Seat 600, all full of women praying for us not to crash because, oh my God, Nanny was a terrible driver. Everyone was praying apart from my Auntie Amparo, who was sat next to my Nana, and she was all the time yelling at her, "But come on, turn the blinkers on, you've got to turn right. Rosa, come on, for the love of God, turn right." Oh my God, this woman, and everyone praying around and praying around. And it was just amazing because girls back then, they were meant to wear dresses and they were meant to learn how to pray. But I had a space, I had an opportunity to go far beyond that. I had an opportunity to just run through the fields, to shake the almond trees, pick the almonds up and tear apart the thick skin of them to get them ready to be sold back in town. I had the opportunity of climbing up trees and falling down 1,000,000 times and injuring myself 1,000,000 times. I would run all around the house. And most importantly, I would run around the fields, feeling that freedom to know that I could be whoever I wanted to be. Of course, there was not only women in my family. My dad's father, my granddad, Agustin, was an incredible influence to me as well. When I was about 11 years old, he came up with this fantastic idea. What he said is, okay, from today onwards, I'm going to buy you the 2 most sold newspapers in Spain. One of them is El País, this one is rather left-leaning, and the other one is El Mundo, which is rather right-leaning within the political spectrum. And my task was very clear. Every day, I had to choose one news piece, something that had happened, and I had to read every single article on both newspapers related to that news bit. And then this is the point. I had to analyse how the journalists would portray the story. I had to analyse what the words were. I had to analyse what concepts, what facts they were trying to allude or trying to mention or not. In which newspaper. I had to analyse so many different things, but the most important of all was I had to form my own opinion. I had to understand what the facts were for myself. And then I had to form my opinion on those facts. So with my granddad, I feel like I really went to the second step, to the moon. He really taught me how to read and understand. And once you've read and understand, the most important bit of it is question what you're reading and understanding and keep questioning what you're reading and understanding. So this brings us to a third stop, I suppose. A third stop is the Milky Way, where I learned that people are more than willing to listen. I am the co-president of the SOAS Feminist Society. SOAS stands for School of Oriental and African Studies. It's an amazing institution. And from very early on in the year, me and my partner in crime, Alex, decided that we wanted to take a bit of a different stance on how student politics and student organisations were. And that's what we did, really. We had an amazing catwalk of all these inspirational and revolutionary and challenging feminists coming to meet us and meet the whole group, like in the picture. And the interesting thing of this is that they taught us not only to become inspired, but also to act upon our inspirations. Now, in all this journey with the Feminist Society, there was one event that struck me the most. It was one we did in support of sex workers and strippers' rights. Vertigo, I tell you. That is exactly what I felt the day of the event. Vertigo. I was nauseous. Oh my God, I mean, come on, it's such a hot topic within feminism, you know, sex work and stripping, etc. What if this event, in support of sex work specifically, would have any negative consequences for us as a society? What if the public would actually react in a bad way to the speakers, amazing sex workers and strippers that were willing to stand up for their rights? What if they would verbally aggress them? What if it would have any consequences for me? I was terrified. But you know what? We got so many messages from so many people throughout the year, not only within this specific event, saying that we had opened up their eyes. And it's interesting because I realised that we often only listen to respond. We don't listen to hear. It's easy to stay within your comfort zone, within my red circle. Of course it's easy. But sometimes, when you step outside of it, magical things happen. So with the Feminist Society, I really felt like I travelled around the Milky Way throughout 12 months, in which an incredible group of people was formed that was willing to listen, challenge, and understand. Full stop. The journey beyond the galaxies to the unknown. Now, I'm standing in the middle of this gig with one of my best friends. It was the first time I was going to see one of my favourite bands of all time, and I was so excited. They're this really little collective of music that does amazing music, that mix old and new styles, and it's just absolutely incredible. And one of my favourite songs of them is called Violencia, violence. It speaks about the metaphorical violence that we often undergo as human beings. It can come from many sources, it can come from the system, from society, from the state, from other human beings. And sometimes, sadly, it's not that metaphorical at all. But as I'm dancing crazily up and down with my friend and enjoying our time in this concert, all of a sudden, under the constellations, under the mighty stars, this one sentence hit me like an absolute thunder. Violència fou tornar a la normalitat després d'un dia de revolta. Violence was returning to normality after one day of revolt. Our problem as feminists and human beings is certainly not that we don't question. Look at where we are. We do question. The problem is we don't question enough. And once we reach our course, once we have completed our task, we drop the course altogether. So isn't that pretty much the same as doing nothing? If we don't keep going, if we don't keep the momentum. Feminism involves a process of constant reinvention and constant challenging that we need to keep in mind. Violence is returning to normality after one day of revolt. So I think it's time for it. I'm ready to pass the baton on to you. And now you have to decide what your first stop of your intergalactic feminist trip will be. Where do you think you'll go? Well, if you're willing to join the journey, allow me to have the honour of being your captain today. Please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. Become an explorer. I assure you that the adrenaline rush you will get when you explore new worlds, you will never have enough of it. And again, feminism is about questioning, and questioning again, and again, and again, and again. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.